Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 166 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have Darlene Sochin. Darlene is a teacher, speaker, intuitive guide, and an expert parent and child empath facilitator. 19 years ago, she and her husband picked up and moved from Boston to Portland, Oregon. On the day they arrived, she received a phone call that confirmed that she had cancer. Once the shock dissipated, she was guided by her first angelic encounter to Reiki energy healing. During her first Reiki session, she realized that her life purpose was to help others heal. Today, she is a Reiki master and intuitive mentor for healers and empaths seeking deeper connection to their soul and educate others with low self-esteem who doubt their beautiful gifts. She loves to facilitate those who desire to find their truth, their path, their happiness by co-creating an individualized program for their journey. This is one of those episodes that when you take a big step back and you think about everything that we've ever talked about on this show, it all starts to connect as to why these pieces of the puzzle, especially when it comes to our own lives, are so important. Being able to heal, being able to transform your life, being able to build relationships, confidence, and determination. If you didn't believe that any other sort of individual on our show hasn't covered that aspect or any of those aspects as a whole, Darlene's story is the one that you want to listen to today, because I think her calling, especially when she starts to explain the cancer diagnosis, how it's impacted others, even for herself, the connections that are happening in her life to feed into those energy patterns that surround us, start to help us to intuitively understand, which is something that we talk about, as to how safety, security, love, and appreciation all come together in this journey of hope, courage, and fulfillment. Expressing yourself doesn't always mean that you have to fall into a certain type of job or position, especially as we talked about in last week's interview episode with Rebecca Williamson. But I think that in this story, you're starting to learn a little bit more as to how we can create better variety, better expression, and better attitudes with the things that we develop within ourselves to help others develop within themselves the same thing. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Darlene Sochin. Darlene, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it as well. And I want to say thank you for being part of this conversation, because I've had Reiki experts on the show, those that have practiced it, those that have even ran their own businesses. And I'm super excited to be talking with someone else about their perspective, because what I find about your perspective is quite different from others, is the backstory. And I'm not going to spoil it. I want to have you share it. So I really want to start off with this question is, what got you involved with Reiki in the first place?
Well, it is an interesting story if you're ready to hear it. My husband and I moved from Boston to Portland, Oregon in 2005. And the day we got here to Portland, I got a phone call from my doctor and was told I had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you hear something and you're in shock, I was in shock for a couple of days. And I had what they call a spiritual awakening. And for people who don't know what that is, in my room, I was hiding under a desk because I had just been paralyzed with fear for a couple of days. And yes, the room filled with this beautiful color purple. And no lie, there were angels standing in front of me. And they told me their names telepathically, Gabriel, Michael, and Raphael.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you're going to be fine. Just listen to your intuition, that voice you hear in your head, that feeling you get in your gut. Follow it. That's us helping you and supporting you. And you'll know what to do. So the next day I woke up and I listened to them immediately. I had just the desire to get up and go to the bookstore. And that's when Borders was still around. How many years ago? That was 19 years ago. This was 19 years ago.
And I remember Borders very well, so I understand this
Yes.
perspective. So
Joshua, yesterday was the day it happened.
wow.
19 years ago.
For my listeners,
Yeah.
we're recording this in August and obviously coming out later, but I find that perspective interesting, that even the energies surrounding this and doing this today to share this is fascinating to me, but I didn't mean to interrupt.
Beautiful. Perfect. So I went to the store and I just let myself be guided, which is interesting. Yeah, I'm not normally like that. I let myself be guided and I walked around the corner and it was the self-help section. I'm like, okay, I've got plenty of time. I can do with some self-help. And I looked at the shelves and on them were these books with the title Reiki, Hands-on Healing. There was about 10 of them or so. I sat there all day, right there in the aisle, and read all of them. Had never heard of it before, and I just knew that this was what I was supposed to be doing. So this was even before Google. So I got home and it was Ask Jeeves, if people remember way back when. I was looking for Reiki practitioners where I was living, and there were 3 people that had a website at that point. Now here in Portland, there's at least 250,000 people who have a Reiki website. So at the time, there were 3 people. I immediately scratched off 2 of them, and the one that I just loved, I went and met her that weekend and started my Reiki sessions. I started receiving them, and I knew during my first session, this is what I was supposed to do with the rest of my life.
Tell me a little bit about the cancer diagnosis when you received it. You said to us here that it seemed to be a little bit of a shock when that kind of occurred, and that's kind of what led you into going to Reiki. But I'm wondering, what was the initial reaction, and what did that mean for you to turn down this path as a result?
It was really interesting. So because it was 19 years ago, it really doesn't feel like I can't feel the trauma that I felt at the time. I can only recall it. The anxiety I had, it was more about making the arrangements to have the surgery, like get this thing out of me. And the stress and the anxiety and the shock, it was more about something is happening that is out of my control. I had to call my previous employer and jump on Cobra insurance because I was in a new place and that was my only option to get it covered by insurance. So I called them. They agreed. I'd been there for many years and actually had to fly back to Boston for both my surgeries. And it was the wait time. It was over a month while I waited for all the doctors to get their shit together and just waiting in that fear. That was what was more the anxiety and the nervousness than anything. So they were pretty supportive and understood that we got this really quickly. And that part wasn't what was scary. It was the being out of control.
So in a way, Reiki helped you, especially going through that wait period, having that surgery done. It was a way of calming yourself.
And that's exactly what the purpose behind receiving Reiki sessions calms the body. And more than anything I've ever done before, because there's things like Qigong, there's Tai Chi, there's exercise, there's walking. Reiki is you lying there receiving healing. You're receiving rather than having to do things. Because even in meditation, you're trying to quiet your mind. It's you trying not to do something. So the idea of Reiki healing and any other healing modality, it's that you get to lie there and receive. And that is the stepping stone to healing, is you allow yourself to receive. And that's the beauty of it.
Was it hard to receive, especially with listening to the news that you were receiving and the patience that you had to have? I mean, from somebody that has not been through cancer, and I've had some people in my life obviously go through that process, and I know that treatments can be enduring, especially if you have a higher stage form. But I'm wondering, Does it help you with a variety of different aspects for you personally when you were going through it? You've been doing this a long time, and I'm kind of,
19.
yeah, that 19 years is a very long time. I have to commend you. You even said it yourself. You're one of the pioneers that has started out with this, and a lot of people jumped on as it gained in more popularity. Even if you've seen other clients that you've had that have gone through this process as you had with cancer, do you think that your experiences have helped them? Do you think that they've gotten a lot more out of that experience doing Reiki sessions with you because of what you've been through? What's your perspective on that?
It definitely connects to the people who choose me as their Reiki practitioner. They see something in what I offer, and most people come because they want to feel safe. They want to feel like there's someone that can hold them and take care of them and that understands them. So they would even tell me, most of my clients say they chose me for those specific reasons. Your story was unbelievable. Your story touched my heart, is what most of my clients say.
Leading up to that, you said that you went to Borders, you picked down this self-help book of Reiki, you started learning about it. What led you from turning into a practicing amateur, which I'm just going to call it that, to now doing it professionally, being able to go through different certifications and even teaching other people to facilitate a business? How did that transition happen? I'm sure myself and my listeners would like to hear that.
Well, I am a teacher. That's what I did for a living my whole life. So it just only felt natural that from becoming a practitioner, which I would do during my first session, I set up saying, I'm going to learn how to do this for other people. So you learn to become a practitioner. And then the next step, the third or fourth step, is becoming the teacher, the Reiki master. And there was no question that's what I would do because I am the teacher. And my philosophy is, and I talked about this before I became a teacher, I was the practitioner talking with other healers, and they would say, people come to us to get healed. People look to us to do the work. And I said, yeah, but you know what? I want to teach them to do their own healing. I want to empower. I didn't use the word empower back in 2005, but a similar idea. I want to teach them that they can do this too. I don't want people to have to depend on other people to heal. So that was my passion, and it is my mission to this day, that I teach people how to do their own healing and not to always have to depend on other people for that.
That's a perfect segue to kind of dive into your business that you started. So for my listeners, the business that Darlene has is called Indigo Healings and Mentoring. So Darlene, tell us a little bit about not just what you offer in the general sense, which obviously is Reiki sessions, but tell us a little bit about that aspect you just were speaking about, which is helping others to be empowered to take charge of that energy.
Yeah, I go deeper using the precepts of Reiki. I teach something that's called Japanese Reiki. There's a lot of different lineages. And the one I teach is spiritual daily practice. And the foundation of one's life, if you have a daily practice, like you and I had talked about before the show, a daily routine of exercising and hiking, and if you have something established that you know you do every single day, there's something healing just in that. You're grounded in your life when you have this practice. So Japanese Reiki is about teaching this foundation from which to live your life. And it changes lives. And in my mentoring that I do, it isn't always about Reiki, even though I always bring Reiki into a conversation. Sometimes people just come for the mentoring. They're an energy healer or they're an empath, which means they feel deeply. They feel other people's feelings. And I work with people who want to learn about their gifts. And that's where the mentoring part comes in. So I offer sessions and I also offer mentoring. And sometimes it's in the same session, the healing along with the mentoring, because if something is healed, it surfaces and then we talk through it and we co-create a plan. So I don't ever just end a session with somebody. At the end, we create a plan. What are you going to do after this session? And this is what intuitively comes through for me as a channel. And they are given the next step. After this session, these are the things that you can do if you want to improve your life. What was the reason you called me for the session? And this is the next step.
I love that because you fit into this model that even I do as a coach. Now, I'm not a Reiki master, or I have never done any of the level certifications, but I feel that I do something similar with just the traditional practices of let's set a goal. Let's make sure that you hold yourself accountable. Let's create a plan around that. So you got me excited hearing that because I find that part of this story that we all create isn't just about working with someone else and being able to say, hey, you're here. Let me tell you about my day. No, it's not just about that. I want to strategize. I want to be able to give you something more. So I love that you incorporate what the energy is around it and then build upon it. And Darlene, I've had so many people on the show that talk about that energy, being able to use that for investigative purposes. I've had people with healing properties, as you mentioned, but I love the tack that you're taking, which again, I'm losing it over here, folks. It's just amazing to hear that because it's so empowering. So let's focus on that for a second. So if I were to come in and I did have a Reiki session with you and I wanted to also have that kind of accountability plan, let's just say that I'm going through a rough patch in my life. What would you recommend, even if it's high level, you're giving me this advice? What would you give to your clients as some of the takeaways so that they feel like they're empowering themselves?
So interesting is my work is now mostly remote. To some people, they say, how can you do an energy healing remotely and not in person? First, that's what I'll do. I'll first explain that and then your other part of your question. So Reiki is similar to the feeling of a prayer. And I know many people can contest to that or resonate with when you pray for someone or when you're being prayed for. If you tap into that, you can actually feel the presence of this love. And the first time I experienced that, it was when I went to Boston to have my surgeries. And my Reiki community I had started to create were praying for me. I felt them from Portland in Boston. I was laying in the bed and I just felt this warm sensation fill my heart. And I was just filled with love. So I do the healing sessions remotely from that similar concept. The first part is the mentoring. We talk about why did you call? Why are you here? What are you struggling with? And the questions that come through, as well as the answers, it's all individualized. It's all intuitive. And I channel this information from your energy. Most of the time, what does come through for people, it will look extremely different for each client. However, one of the strategies that always shows up is, do you have a daily spiritual practice? Because that is the heart of a grounded, centered life. It's in that time, first of all, you're committing to yourself. You're prioritizing yourself. And you're also connecting to yourself on a deeper level than, say, if your self-care is getting your nails done or going for a jog or something. When you have a daily spiritual practice, you can sit with yourself for a few minutes a day. You just tune into your body. I do body scans all day. Where is there tension? Breathe into it, release. It's as simple as that. So when I say spiritual, it doesn't have to be Buddha or God or Jesus or anything like that. Spiritual just simply means you're connecting with your soul. So I don't want to have anybody turn away because of the word spiritual. It just means that you would like to develop a deeper connection to yourself, to your body, to your mind, so that you can ask it, what do you feel like doing today? What do you feel like eating today? What do you feel connected to today? Because when you're making those bigger choices in life, you have this daily connection to yourself. Your decisions will be more clear. You'll be more centered and trusting of your choices because of this daily connection.
I think it's a perfect segue because we were talking about before we started of the empath focus that you now have, the mission of that. And I love the fact that you're incorporating both adults and children. So when people normally think of this process, essentially some of what you just laid out, children don't necessarily come to mind right away. And another Reiki person that I had on the show actually had shared with me that there is a space for that. But I'm curious of your perspective on how children come into the fold of this. So I'm wondering if you could tie all those pieces together for us.
Oh, they have to, because they are the future generation. We have to give them all the tools that they can use and empowering them instead of them being afraid of the world. I mean, it's a very unpredictable world right now. And when I was a teacher, I just saw how the system doesn't fit most kids anymore. And I heard this on an interview that you did with your guest. The education system does not fit even us anymore. And I was in school back in the 70s, and it's even more outdated now. And these children are being forced to fit into a system that their bodies and their energy and their excitement about life, it doesn't fit into these boxes. So the traditional way of helping and supporting them is making them adapt to our world, when really what we need to be doing is asking, what do they need? And at least meeting them halfway and giving them more information, like being more free about talking about emotions, clearing your energy. The things we run into when we're out in the world, we don't even realize what we're picking up and thinking about and seeing. So we see what's going on in our outer world, whether it's a car accident or something on the news, that stays in our bodies, that we hold on to that. And if you can imagine a 4-year-old seeing a car accident or homeless people on the street, they need something that will help them, that will support them emotionally and energetically and help to empower them to be in this crazy world that we live in. And I work with the parents because they come with their traumas. So the reason I work with the parents is to help heal them so they can see what their children are seeing. So I give them this vision of, this is what your child is seeing. What would you like them to see instead? What tools would you like them to have that you didn't have? That's my main goal. As a child, I had zero skills and saw spirits and ghosts. And I am now the adult helping the parents to see through my eyes. This is what your children are seeing. And then I show the parents what the children are seeing. So it's like this mirror I give them. So my main goal is to empower the parents so that they can empower the children. Again, like I would do with my clients. I'm going to empower you so you can use the tools for yourself. And that's my goal, is that parents have more answers than they would get, whether it's in the school system or traditional therapies to help kids with a lot of the issues we see, whether it's ADHD, sensory integration issues, the spectrum. There's a lot of words for what children are experiencing right now. And this is just some more tools we can give them to thrive rather than just swallowing a pill. This goes beyond that. So I always tell people, what I would love to see is combining all the worlds, combining all your options. Give yourself options and see how they all can work together, what it's meant to integrate. And the child, everything you possibly can to help them. That's my view.
Yeah. And I want to flip that on its head for a moment, because you said something that is pretty profound, and I don't think that even our culture thinks about. Even with the dynamic of a parent and a child, which we have let school systems decide what is best, and sometimes the parents have been left out of that equation. To you, what makes you different to be able to have that capacity to say to children, to help them with their parents? Think of it this way. What other ways can you use your energies for the betterment? Because you're right. There is a lot of negative energy that I feel like is protruded into a variety of different parts of our lives. And regardless of what your stance is on a variety of views, which is not really the goal of this conversation at all, Darlene, I don't want to trap you in anything. What makes this an awesome opportunity for someone to engage with you, to see that other perspective? You've been doing this, like I said, for a very long time. I'm sure you have a lot to share from that, but what would you offer to a parent and child more specifically than, say, somebody else that's practicing this?
That's a great question. So the school system obviously has the way they have to run things. Children have to behave a certain way. There has to be certain expectations placed on them. And even talk therapy, there's only so much that can be said and done, rules and regulations. When a parent trusts me with being able to read the energy of the child and being able to intuitively understand, again, I channel what people are asking for, what their soul is asking for. Mm-hmm. And when a parent trusts me, it's the biggest honor in the world, because I do have my professional background. I do have the master's degree and all of that in my years of training as a teacher. But I also have that intuitive, energetic piece where I can actually tune in to the energy of the child and give that child, this is what a lot of, where in other places, I can give that child that space of safety and say, here in this room, here in this space, you can feel free to talk about whatever you want to talk about. And we will hold you, we will love you and protect you. And it's this level of safety and love and appreciation. The children just open up in a way that they don't see in other spaces, and giving them the opportunity to actually talk and then provide the information to the parent. And it's an energetic connection that can't be described in words. It really is.
Yeah. Your answer to that strikes me in a lot of different ways, because I think about all the parents that struggle with even identifying with their children because of the work that they do. They might not see them very well in terms of the obligations that they have on a day-to-day basis. There's many different schedules. There's many different opportunities to bond over weekends, but weekends aren't good enough. So there's the time aspect. There's the interpersonal connection. There's just so many different variables. And now that you say that, I love that answer, because it isn't just about the intuitiveness in my perspective, like you described. It's really about building a relationship. And that relationship, especially between a parent and child, sometimes is damaged by not only the things that might have gone wrong, and it's not even anything that the parent or the child did, but it's just about being at peace, being able to lie
Right.
still, and using some of the words that you described earlier with your experiences, I could see how you build those bridges. And I love that. I don't think we do enough because, especially in the United States, I feel like it's just so busy, and we sometimes need to learn how to pause. I know I sometimes, even as a coach, I need to learn how to pause.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah, like the families are so busy, they're going and they're running, and there's no time, especially if there's more than one child. And my program that I have set up for families is, let's look at your family schedule and create a scenario where everybody involved can find that space. So I help people look at their family and their calendar and their schedule and take into consideration that the child that's at hand, the child that we're talking about, how can we nurture that child in the space of your family and your schedule? And I sometimes work with parents, and sometimes it's a couple of months before we even get to the child, because there's all these layers that they first have to go through before they can even agree to changing the lifestyle of the family. It's multi-layered.
Darlene, we're almost at the end of our time, but I have this one final question before I give you the opportunity to talk about your business and if people want to work with you, which, hearing this conversation, I can't see why people wouldn't. You bring so much variety to this whole discussion. As I've said, you've been doing this for 19 years. You have been through what I would consider for many people a very negative medical experience, which it's only gotten worse for some people, especially with a cancer diagnosis. You have been to the other side of that and so much more. I see you and your positivity, your radiance comes through the camera lens, although this is an audio only recording. I tell you folks, I've been watching Darlene the last half hour and it is just a radiation of happiness and positive focus, which I think that is really important for somebody that if I want to work with is really gifted in. What has this meant for you in terms of changing your life? And what does it mean for you to keep doing it even after all this time? What's in it for you at this point? Is there anything in it for you? Is it about everybody else? What is your mission now as you continue to build out your business and help others?
Well, definitely my mission that keeps me up at night is helping humanity become the best that it can, or even go back to the way it used to be. What the whole journey shared with me was to become my own advocate. More than anything, I was an empath. I was so painfully shy to leave the house. I hated school. Just everything terrified me as a little girl. And I was 37 when I had this experience. And it wasn't until all of this happened, I started to actually find my voice, which is what you teach. I found my voice at 37 because there were choices and decisions being made without me or thinking, oh, this is the best thing for you. And because I had started doing the Reiki and feeling into my soul and connecting with my body started to say, no, 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 no. So the Reiki and the cancer diagnosis, it all came together. And I started to feel what my no's were. I started to feel what my yeses were. I started to understand and connect to what my soul was here to do. And I'm a role model to be an advocate for yourself. And now I empower parents and children to be advocates for themselves.
37 must be the magic number for our interview tonight because, Darlene, what you don't know is that I'm actually 37 years of age myself. So I must be on the brink of a breakthrough because everything that you just described is, even for myself, I'm not perfect and I'm even working through too. So I love that that number has come up tonight. And maybe that's a sign for you too, that you're doing all the right things. But with that said, Darlene, I want to give you the last few moments. I would love for you to let my listeners know about Indigo Healings and Mentoring, how they can get in contact with you if they want to contact and book with you a potential session. Maybe they want to work on some goals as part of a Reiki session like you were talking about
Right.
earlier. I would probably be even interested myself just hearing all of this. But with all that said, let us know how they get in touch with you. Maybe they can find you on social media. I'm going to give you the last few minutes to pitch yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, besides working with the children and parents, I do help people who are empaths, who are sensitive to energy, who get a sense that they do have gifts that they want to look into and explore their intuitive gifts. So the healing and mentoring sessions I offer, we dive into that, and they're all very individualized. So Indigo Healings and Mentoring PDX.com is my website. And my Facebook personal profile, I'm out there. I'm honest. I'm vulnerable. I share. I teach on my page. And I also have a Facebook group I started for parents called Parenting Empathic Children with Darlene. So if you do have a child that you're working with, I share regularly, and I have programs for parents and I have programs for people just wanting to get in touch with their souls. The best way to reach me.
I love that. I loved all those things that you are doing. And I'm going to put all that in the episode notes just in case anybody is interested in reaching out, even for the website, even getting in touch with you on your social media. But Darlene, I just want to say to wrap this up, I have found in my life, especially with all the ebbs and flows, that sometimes we need to have positive energies surrounding us. I love the fact that even 19 years ago, when nobody even knew about what Reiki is and even about what it meant to go through that exercise, that you stuck with it despite the number of people that have also participated. That means that you're part of a community that you're helping to inspire that generation to not only help others, but to see the gifts that they have inside themselves, the energies, if you will, that they might not even have unlocked yet. I find that synergy so important in our society today. And I love the work that you're doing. I love hearing this conversation today. I'm super pumped just because of everything that you've shared. And for all those reasons, Darlene, thanks for being on Speaking from the Heart today. It was a privilege to talk to you.
Thank you. It was a huge pleasure.
I want to thank Darlene again for sharing her story, being able to have her voice project into our lives and letting that energy not only manifest in the room that you might be listening this to or even in your car, but allowing you and me to get this expert guidance, quote unquote. Because as people go through life, especially through difficult times, just like what Darlene had shared today, you can see how that transformation didn't let that hold her back. She was able to use that to push herself forward. But it was really about how you get started, how you manifest that energy to push yourself into that direction just from the get-go. I think that with hearing about medical issues or hearing about something that is really tough in someone's life, surgery or any other sort of life circumstance can be very tough. Whether we think that we can receive the healing, especially when we go through something of this nature, and whether we're able to get to the other side to feel like we're safe, being able to take care of ourselves, whether that's through somebody else or even our own devices, it sometimes is very tough. We have to feel that transition that is happening from being the way that we were, going through a 9-to-5 job and going into a more free-flowing pattern, especially if we're on our own and the only person motivating ourselves is us. We have to have that safeguard. We have to have that motivation for us to keep moving that needle forward. And I think that that's what holds some people back, amongst other considerations, to being able to push ourselves into that direction. I think that transition that Darlene went through, especially from being a full-time teacher to be able to create that satisfaction of doing what she is, helping others find the healing power of Reiki, which we've talked about with a number of our guests on the show, helps us to understand that practice, building that routine, that spiritual daily practice that we really can be doing, means that we also have to invest in trust. That trust of knowing that we're going to get to where we want to get to, even if we have that plan that we need to work on with somebody else to keep moving that forward. I think that we even learned today about the fact that why are we here? What is our calling? Finding that intuition, that energy perspective that allows us to breathe into all these various areas, mind, body, and soul, allows us to see then, too, how we can be able to evolve, how we're able to create connection, how we feed all those energy systems to keep on growing and growing and growing. I know that for many of us, we need to find that purpose. We need to put that into practice, and that oftentimes means we have to take a big step back. The daily connections, the things that we feed into the energy that we have surrounding us. Growing that all together means in tandem, we need to learn new skills. We have to learn new abilities and new practices that we have to also put into time management. Putting 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours a day, especially if we're really intense about it, to be able to grow into what we're ultimately able to share. But it also means letting go of the things that are negative in nature. Cancer is not a pretty thing. I've known of many friends, I've known of many families that have gone through this terrible, terrible type of thing, especially when it comes to the cancer diagnosis, the treatment, the chemotherapy, the different shifts of energy, and realizing that we have to build a better focus, a better attention to what we have going on inside ourselves, but also surrounding ourselves too. That's where energy and soul comes into play. To be honest, I'm not quite surprised by Darlene's choice, and it's only because of listening to so many other stories of how this shift happens in people's lives so that we can have that safety, that security, having love and appreciation from others, doing the good work but also being rewarded in return, means that we have to find that space. We have to get ourselves into that bigger picture that we're trying to draw. That means that journey of learning how to speak, how to create engagement with each other, all comes together when we're able to say yes and when we're able to say no to the various things that are happening all around us. How we become better and how we explore that variety of expression means that we have to keep on empathically learning how we can make better decisions, how we can make better choices. And I think Darlene today really shared in her story how that happened, how that all laid out. And it's easy to listen to so many of these stories, but yet at the same time ask yourself, how would I ever be able to manifest something like this of my own? I think that we need to take a great big pause here to explain that each of these stories, even Darlene's today, is a way in which we're able to transition our lives into a different dimension. And it allows us to see that there are multiple avenues to get there. And Darlene's is no different. She had great amounts of different things happening in her life, realizing that if she didn't make this choice, she would have passed away from cancer. But she refused because she believed in what the healing power of not only relationships, confidence, determination could do, but also what the healing properties of Reiki, the things that really help us to build into that understanding of how to create healing in our lives, is what made her get to that next step. If you think that just sitting back and listening to these stories is going to help you change your perspective, I hate to break the news to you, but it's not exactly the case. Sure, maybe Reiki, especially in what Darlene has shared today, will give you that first step. And maybe that is something that will be of interest. But how long will you stay with it? 30 days? 60 days? 90 days? I often ask myself that question because when I first started this podcast, this was supposed to be for only 90 days. That was it. I wanted to see what it would look like to just have this exposure, but then I realized that after those 90 days, I fell in love with it. It allowed me to intuitively understand that if I wanted to grow my business, if I wanted to grow myself, if I wanted to help others create this relationship, confidence, determination through the voice that they have in this ever-evolving world, we needed to keep on doing this show. And that's why even after 166 episodes, we are here, we're present, and we're not going away anytime soon. And that's the whole deal, is that we have to find that space, especially what Darlene had to find is that space to move into that direction, create that powerful presence in her life so that she was able to grow and speak with that engagement so that she could help others also find that voice. It's not easy. And it means that you have to dig deeper than usually other people have to dig. Some people often fall into it. It just happens for them. We've had many guests on the show that have shared that kind of perspective. But when medicine and energy come together, it's been surprising to me to see how much of the healing properties that we're able to see through all these experiences. Friends, I know that it can be very easy for us to listen to something like this today and be very skeptical. But if you have any inkling of the fact that Darlene has lived a life that she's been able to help others through her empathic ability to be able to realize that cancer wasn't going to stop her, but yet her story was going to be able to empower others, this is the living proof today. Don't just sit there. Give yourself that opportunity that even when that shock of bad news comes over you, whether that is something medically related, whether that is losing your job, whether it is somebody that has walked away because they didn't agree with a certain stance that you had. It's all about understanding each other. It's about understanding ourselves, giving us that grace to be able to become not only the best version of ourselves, but also learning how we can give ourselves habits that are life-changing, ever-evolving, and habit-forming, that remove the negative energy and feed into our energy systems that empower us to be able to live the happiest of lives, just like our guest has done today. Journeys are not easy. Journeys might be difficult. But if you keep asking yourself why you're here, what is your calling? One day, the answer to that question will come, and it will be surprising to you to see what you might be able to uncover, what you will be able to unearth as a result of that awesome experience that you're living, which is the grand adventure of life. The energy of expert guidance not only comes from different practices such as Reiki, but understanding that when you have an open mind and open heart, and you're willing to accept new ideas and new challenges, nothing is impossible. No matter what you might have to defeat, no matter what you might have to overcome in life, whether it is something like cancer, just know that there are people out there that are rooting for you to win the race, to win the battle, and be able to go on to create that plan that not only helps others, but don't forget to help yourself be that best version that you never thought possible. Thanks for listening to episode number 166 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.